So Sajeed, thank you very much for coming back. Since we spoke last, your thinking about the future leader has evolved. Can you tell us a little bit what you feel or sense are the challenges and the opportunities of leadership in the future?
Thanks, Nick. It's good to be here again. And like you say, I think following our last session, I've had a lot more insight into where I believe future leaders need to be looking. And it's not as if it's a simple answer. It's not as if you can literally identify a particular landscape where they should be looking. The biggest challenge of leadership in the future is dealing with uncertainty and ambiguity. Leaders have to be comfortable with uncertainty. And for them to be comfortable with uncertainty, they need to be willing to learn. In fact, there's almost a need to go back to a point where they're willing to say, I don't know. And if you look at most traditions in the East and the West, the wisest person is often the one who's the first to say, I don't know. Because they consider the future or the reality as being something that has got infinite possibilities. The ability to shape our futures is around emptying our assumptions of the past, our prejudices, our biases, our cognitive bias, and to allow the future to emerge. That requires faith, in a sense, courage, the ability to challenge our assumptions. So, future leadership is the capacity to open ourselves up to possibility and then to co-create a future with people and partners around us.
So what does it mean for our education system? How should we educate our children differently?
Very good question. So my view about education as it stands is that it is outdated, it is anachronistic. It belongs to another era. Just so that you know, our current education system was created largely by the British, where they essentially created an efficient way of imparting information to as many people as possible and to create what I would call very compliant people who would fit into a particular mold or probably become very obedient civil servants. Remember, so much of the world was colonized by the British, and their systems and their approach in many ways was brilliant, but in many ways have created limitations for the world we're moving into. Most of our education system is designed along those lines, and everything is in silos. You learn maths, you learn English, you learn history, and those particular methodologies are no longer workable because information is available at anybody's fingertips. Our entire libraries are at our fingertips. The need to memorize things is no longer that important. The ability to see things and see patterns and sense ambiguity and be able to deal with uncertainty and to design and create, those are the qualities that are going to set future leaders apart. Remember, most repeatable tasks are ultimately going to be done by robots. So if you're doing something that's repetitive, you are going to find yourself without a job potentially, because repetitive tasks will ultimately be automated. It's the non-repeatable tasks, the use of judgment, the ability to abstract, and the ability to imagine and create. These things are going to be far more difficult for automation to actually be the primary driver of.
So Sajeed, if you were called upon to become the next dean of the Future Leader Academy, how would you go about drafting the curriculum?
So I would bring in 3 core disciplines, which are really my focus as well. And without sort of meaning to sound as if I'm just banding around labels, the 3 core disciplines are systems thinking, design thinking, and what I call agile methodology. systems thinking was very much in vogue in the 70s and 80s when one of the gurus of management and leadership thinking wrote a book called The Fifth Discipline, Peter Senge. Unfortunately, it seems to have fallen on the wayside as everybody's become diverted by our current preoccupations. But essentially, systems thinking allows you to look at things much more holistically. We all are part of a system. We ourselves are systems, our bodies are system, our families are system, our society is a system. The capacity to look at ourselves within a bigger picture, or to look at situations as being part of a bigger system or picture, is a fundamental necessity for the future, because when you move one thing, when you change one thing, it is bound to affect other things, because more and more in the world we are part of an interdependent society, connected society, and therefore things are connected, they work in reference to each other, and they are affected by other things. Look at global warming, for example. The other thing is really design thinking. So the ability to empathize, to put ourselves in other people's shoes and say, what do they want? What do they need? What problem are they trying to solve? And how can I solve that problem for them? And the last one is agile thinking, which is the ability to make things or do things quickly without getting paralyzed by analysis, process, bureaucracy. So a school that is based around those three disciplines would look at problems and solutions in a very different way, and would allow the students to co-create and use leaps of imagination and creativity to solve the problems that we face today.
Now, Sajeed, on a philosophical level, you're the descendant of ancient culture, if I may, the Persian culture. What role does the past play in co-creating the future?
Interesting. So, yeah, it's probably probable that we came from Persia. My ancestors spent a long time in India. In fact, they were largely based from India. But it is interesting that when my ancestors went to a particular part of India, which is around Gujarat, there's a desert called the Desert of Kutch, which is devoid of anything. And when they ended up there, because they were migrants, they were told that they were not allowed to build anything, create anything, or farm any of the more arable land. So of necessity, they became traders and itinerant. So they used to move from place to place selling things. And the logical extension of that is that they became adventurers. And my ancestors left India by ship and came to Africa because they were pioneers and they wanted to explore new opportunities and new lands. They ended up in Africa, and I originally come from Malawi. I was born in Malawi. My father was born in Malawi. But what is interesting about that is that I am by definition a traveler. I am comfortable anywhere in the world. I am able to see opportunities that other people don't see. I'm able to also be happy with a sense of being transient. I don't need deep roots. In many ways, I'm really brilliantly suited to the world that we're going into, where the world is a village. You don't have to be in any one country or place to feel at home, and you're able to deal with foreign cultures, new situations, and new opportunities on the fly. And I feel in many ways that my DNA has prepared me for that world.
So in a way, your mind is a millennial mind.
Yes.
Now, Sajeed, you mentioned the word wisdom. What role does wisdom play in the future of leadership?
Nick, that's such a big question. And actually, wisdom is such a nebulous term that often people wonder what wisdom actually is. Without being sort of dogmatic about it, I think the way I see wisdom is the capacity to apply knowledge in the most effective way. So there's no point in having knowledge if you don't know how to use it. It's just it might as well be information. And there's no point in taking knowledge and using it in an ineffective way, because you are not creating anything of value or substance, or changing people's environment, futures, destinies. I think wisdom in a small and big way is the ability to use knowledge in the most apposite way to bring about fundamental change at a human level. And I think to be wise, you need to have this capacity to see beyond the present and to stop being confined by narratives that dominate thinking around you. So often, in fact, in the East, they say that you haven't achieved wisdom until 1,000 people have called you mad. Because it's often the wise who see beyond the obvious, and the masses who don't see beyond the obvious feel that what the wise are saying is nonsense or not relevant or not important.
Now, Sajeed, you're packaging your own wisdom into a keynote presentation and possibly a speaking tour. Can you maybe give us a couple of highlights? What will that entail?
Yeah, essentially the project is called Lodestar. A lodestar is a star that guides sailors on the seas. And I think what I'm saying is that we're all embarking on journeys in different ways. What I'm trying to create is the ability for business people and individuals to have a frame of reference on how they're going to navigate an uncertain future. Its most obvious application is in business. So the talk and the approach is designed to help executives to navigate uncertain times, uncertain waters, uncertain territories, to create ecosystems and partnerships, to share in a different way, so that they're able to be much bigger than the sum of their parts. And that's what it's about.
And I guess it can be applied to your personal life as well.
100%. It has to be. There has to be a personal relevance to any meaningful work that we do. If we exclude ourselves from the work that we do, then it lacks purpose, and sooner or later it tends to fail.
Well, Sajeed, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick.
And all the best for your future speaking career.
Thanks very much.